Well, welcome to everyone from Traveling Molly's here in Chicago and with people from everywhere from California to New York. We have as features tonight, Marianne Boruch and Janice Harrington. Well, welcome to everyone from Traveling Molly. I'm not sure where I'm hearing that from.
That was for me. I'm sorry.
Oh, your voice went up, I think.
Ooh.
Anyway, Traveling Molliers and YouTubers, welcome. Tonight, I'm running the show on my own, except with our tech guy, Bill Harrison, who's right across the hall from me. And Al DeGenova wasn't able to make it tonight. He's partying in Mexico. And so I'm feeling very sympathetic, and actually I will be there in Mexico in March, so you'll see me from there. So here we are. I forget what I'm supposed to talk about. We have a lovely open mic. We have a couple of great features. And I'm trying to think how else we start this. We're going to start with the open mic, and usually Al and I start by reading a poem of our own. What I want to say to you in general, open micers, as you probably all know, you each have 5 minutes to read your poems, and I will call you in no particular order. And I will start with a mind towards all of us who have been either spending too much time in contact with the healthcare industry or hopefully just doing it from 2 or 3 degrees of separation. I've spent way too much time dealing with doctors, and my hearing is one of the reasons that I have. So I'm going to read an ode to my hearing aids and the necessary batteries. Dear devices, when I say I need you, what I mean is, in your absence, everything goes quiet as nothing, quiet as a cloud or a candle with the flame snuffed out, ocean wave turned ice in midair. All charged up, I'm humming to a dozen minuets and life's a ball, but minutes past midnight I've burned through the batteries to find I left the spares back home. Another Cinderella shoeless when time doesn't stop until softly it does. Meaning off go the crickets, off the tick-tock and talk radio, quiet as a jackhammer sounding like a mouse or a warbler with laryngitis. Dear devices, please don't leave me to my own. I've pulled my every pocket inside out. It's only you between my leaden ears and yammering day. Without you, nothing but everything changes. Can you hear? The chambers of night echo quiet as never. Thank you. I'm looking forward to all of you. And by the way, Sarah from New York, who completes our bi-coastal reading tonight. Good to have you here. And just so you know, when we call on you for the open mic, actually, that was my hearing aid telling me that my batteries are about to go out. So 5 minutes for everyone. And I am going to ask Cameron Guerin to get us started. and then I'll mute myself.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, okay, great. Great to be here again. So fun to see everyone. I will be reading a longer piece, just one poem tonight. And this poem is coming out, I think this week in a journal called Sepia. And I'll just tell you a tiny bit of backstory. I met my partner, now fiance, in June of 2020, the same week I got laid off from my corporate job. This is all in the poem. And then, I don't know, just because we could, and maybe as kind of a test drive, we went to Chiapas, Mexico for 5 weeks. I don't know, to just kind of do something, really. That's what it says in the poem, just to do something. And as the world was kind of shutting down. And this poem is about that experience. So it is called Daybook, Rented Mountain House, Chiapas Pandemic. I sleep on top of my hands. They fall asleep, drift to pins. I shake them, a pillowcase on the line. Wake up, hands. Deb, the HR lady, my teammate for office golf, lets me go on a Zoom call. She's wearing a navy blazer. Look for my severance in the mail, she tells me before her face atomizes, gone. It takes 2 planes to get here. We fly masked and shielded, leaning away from the man in the window seat, leaning toward each other's chins. Have to do something, have to. So I do this with E, my new love. In San Cristobal de las Casas, the caretaker shows us bedrooms up and down, their flanking baths. Vines grow inside, a living design. How can we have no pesos? When I tip him later, grin. We are asking urgently for keys. We are not receiving the keys. When I look it up later, I learn we were asking urgently for socks. My studio spans a wall of pine trees, trees for a chilly elevation, the place I'll write while I wait inside this comma interlude. The white curtains are knots making big V's to shine the light through. I plug in the space heater. E makes us lunch. It's a strange newness. Our first date, summer, still recent, a high top table, falling for E on that patio. All my social media posts hinge on the hashtag second chance romance. Ron texts that my tenants back home do know how to bleed a radiator, but their neuroses may discount their efforts to be effective. If Ron were not my handyman, he would make a great therapist. Hands might not know how to free themselves. If my body buries them, numb. I must help my hands on the way to untangle. My colleagues in private equity say my cubicle is still empty. You can walk away from your own life. Take your hands with you. Here in San Cristobal de las Casas, rain for 24 hours. It's not something you can wait out under a shop awning. You have to plan for water like this, rivers through the garden. The city pipes in rock music to speakers, gazebo. 2 bike police rest on a bench. The afternoon's sultry and we would have picked a different song. We find the cathedral hush. The second time we discuss moving in together, I can't sleep. In the shadowed blues, E's breaths tremble his chest. I wait for him in the dip between waves. I have a lot of questions for myself. We do not want plastic on our bedroom window, my tenants write to say. The plastic will block their view of the neighbor's brick wall, they say. Ron, my henchman, tells them that this is Chicago and this is how we do winters. It's either plastic or the wind. I'll never know his parents, but I talk to his mother's ghost. Monique, I say, was he stubborn or placid as a boy? Did he make you abandon your grocery carts with his tantrums? Monique is reticent. She bides her time. Fourth day of cold rain. Fog draws around our windows like a shawl. We are bundled in blankets, days distance from a beach. Entering my 5th month of job searching, we see another funeral. Band in the street, family procession to horns. We plan to book a return home, but we don't. We put it off. COVID is almost done here, Jose says. We are almost green. One chapter is we both have electric toothbrushes, 2-minute timers. They are different brands. It is a way to understand us. Please wait for me and let's brush teeth together. 1 in 15 people in Chicago have COVID and Ohio is under lockdown. I sit still in the cold sun, this garden. I face the mountains that face Guatemala. 20 days till the election, 19 days till our flight home. Sudden sun and we'll return the rented scooter. E drives, I'm holding myself up back here with no one's help. I have a lot of questions for myself. The last time I loved like this, that's a sad story. We hike the bike onto its kickstand, drop the key, walk the crowd on a tortilla scent. This time it's Louis Armstrong from the gazebo speakers and E takes my waist, spins us. Cathedral's door yellow and locked. We'll bargain for a taxi when the sun slips. Late, I'll water the vines that grow inside our rented house. I'll sweep their errant leaves into the bin. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That was so good. I just love how you kind of go through these different sections and, root it in what's going on in the pandemic, in Chicago winter, and the election from that time. It just kind of brings us back, not far enough away back. Next up, Leonard Lund.
Or evening, everybody. Well, it's definitely not afternoon anymore. Okay, the usual 3 pieces for you tonight. After La Vietnamita, 1990, a sculpture by Enrique Alferez. The fog lifts, perhaps the sun rises, maybe the rain or snow stops. The grandmother, older sister, aunt, or mother stops what she's doing, looks around. Here's the helicopters coming, rumbling tanks, boots striking the street, dirt, rice paddy, scoops up the child and flees. Who? What? Sufficiently answered for the moment, which itself is not a moment, any more than endless raindrops are singular. And there's no time to simply catalog the whens and wheres of now, let alone the past storms forgotten, leaving all the whys excused, ignored, unchallenged, and unending. In the morning and the passing of the storm, the fog lifting slowly to reveal a waiting sun, we leave the village to cross the rocks, to walk the beach, some in search of flotsam and jetsam for profit or use, my nurse and I looking for surviving sailors and those poor but safe in heaven's embrace. On a bad day, the last marked the tide line, perhaps floating indistinguishable from a spar traveling seaward, the fluke shape of another's leg or arm raised above the sand. While a better day finds, instead or in addition, the cast-up living, succorable, reparable. The best, of course, are uneventful walks on a perfect day, nothing uncovered but shanties echoing from well beyond the reef. fire starter. All it wanted at last was an added sound blown on tiny bones, impromptu, unexpected to both, a single extended syllable of sigh or satisfaction to weld their souls to one. Thank you.
We've certainly heard of enough fire in the news that I imagine we might be hearing a whole number of fire poems upcoming. So let's see. Jim Madigan. Jim Madigan, let's hear what you've got.
I had a fire poem before, but tonight we just passed the anniversary of something that's been in the news for a whole year. So this is a poem called Postcard. Ashley Babbitt, Washington, D.C., January 6th. Aaron, today is the day. I am totally pumped. Before I met you, I was a fuck up. Yeah, or maybe even after, you know, rear-ending your ex. Oh, that bitch, LOL. Barely graduated high school, didn't do well in the Air Force, should have hung in there for the pension. But what is the hell? It's all in the past. Today, yes, yes. Today, it's the beginning of the Second American Revolution. Today, we're going to take the Capitol, then be welcomed into the White House. I swear, I'm going to be leading the charge, shouting, go, go. You will be so proud of me today, Ashley. Thank you. And the second poem got published last June when we thought that COVID was disappearing. But unfortunately, it's still relevant. It's called Plague Mirror. When the plague stepped off the plane, it held a mirror for all to see. It showed the broken promise of liberty and justice for all. As plague danced across the country, the mirror made visible the crusted carbuncles of a for-profit healthcare system and illuminated the warehoused elderly, kept in their rooms unable to receive visits from their children while they grew sick and died. The plague mirror brought the carceral state out of the shadows, publicly laid bare that we lock away people of color, the uneducated, those mentally disabled. Plague slipped through the walls and cells to touch Mumia in a Pennsylvania prison, who lived, and Nicholas Lee in Cook County Jail, awaiting his parole violation hearing, who did not. Unmistakably, the mirror unmasked the rich get richer, the poor get more numerous. Workers in service and health essentially expendable. While the duopoly of the oligarchy debated and divided over what to do, they were still able to agree on a malignant military budget. So no universal health care, no free public education for all, no homes for the homeless, no end to the police state. The plague laughed as death counts climbed and the rulers proclaimed through the media they own, things are under control, the mirror is cracked. Thank you.
I'm so glad to be hearing political poetry tonight. The next thing I hear we're going to be hearing from Robbie Nestor is humorous and racy. So let's hear it.
Okay. It's called Naughty Bits, and it and the other poem I'm going to read today were published in McQueen's Quinterly, this last issue. Freud said, Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Yet he never saw an object he didn't take for a male member of the club, impeccably tuxedoed gentleman standing erect at the front gate. We have so many names for genitalia, which seem to lead an independent life of all their own. The fork, the cork, blind alley, cyclops, bagpipe, whim wham, gravy boat. Whether bum or tits, tushy or wee wee, knowing and nasty or euphemistic, they reveal how people feel about their bodies. Think of the many names we give to a much loved pet or child, even a deity. It's love that fuels this, sometimes fear that multiplies the epithets. No one name can capture the power of the parts we're naming, an awesome generative force, yet at the same time, vaguely ridiculous. Consider the vulva, that frilly pink party hat, part of us, yet somehow larger than ourselves.
How could you not like that?
I don't know. The second poem is an ekphrastic, so may I share an image? Okay, you're giving me permission. Then I will go ahead. And this is a photograph by Anne Leshy Wood called Cloud Confetti. And my poem is called Inquest. And it was a finalist in McQueen's Quinterly Triple Q Challenge. Inquest. Today we convene to examine a suspicious incident. Aside from the alleged cloud, nothing odd seems to have happened at the beach. The place was empty. No revelers roasting corn and quahogs. No heckling gulls and sandpipers stalking the thin line between sea and land. As always, the querulous sea muttered under its breath, scrawling its complaints on the wet sand and rubbing them out again with a closed fist. Only a single cloud floated like a decoy in the sky. Unlike other clouds that shift and toss, spreading themselves like butter on blue bread or whirling into the likeness of distant hills, this one hung for hours, never altering its shape or size. A most unnatural cloud, crafted by the hands of humans, or else originating on another world. The witness states she watched it till the early afternoon, when it erupted like a shattered pane into a multitude of shards, taking flight as moths might, or a colony of bats disturbed by light. Was it a test of alien technology gone awry? Without a sample, it's impossible to say. But we'll watch the skies and comb the waters. It could not have been an ordinary cloud.
And besides being great poems, that's an amazing photograph. And she's also a poet, isn't she?
Yes, she is. And she's very ill right now and in the hospital and has no family. So if you are friends with her on Facebook, I know that she would appreciate hearing from you. She has alpha gal, that tick-borne illness where you become allergic suddenly to protein. And
Right.
she's very ill.
You'd like to think that with as much medical stuff as we're dealing with COVID, that we wouldn't have to deal with anything else, but no. So let's see. Next, how about Mike Pewican? Mike, good to hear you. See.
Hi. Well, I am certainly looking forward to hearing Janice and Marianne in a little bit. I have two poems. Let's see. The first one, you might call it a political poem. It's called Election Day. As we take our seats, we're handed bags of rubies to make us more comfortable with the loss of our loved ones. Flight attendants float through the dread with a choice of complimentary beverages. The plane bucks and heaves. We sit like lame ducks glaring at our sky malls. The pilot announces, upon landing, we'll all be hanged. A teenager has smuggled a machete down his pants. Don't pull it out yet, Valentino. The pilot says our sins will never be forgiven. Below us, the city writhes in what might seem to be ecstasy, a mob's fork stuck in its democratic heart. The second one has a quote from Carl Jung. He says, "Through pride, we are ever deceiving ourselves, but deep down below the surface, a still, small voice says to us that something is out of tune." This is called Out of Tune. Ask yourself, what would Lemony Snicket say in this situation? At the top of his lungs, is it Jesus or the Xanax? J-Lo runs her finger down your sternum. She doesn't care if you notice. She just wants you to be in love. In fact, you're like J. Edgar Hoover, without the wiretaps, the goon squad, the little black dress. You wake from a wild night and Madame Curie is in your arms. In the lecture hall, B.F. Skinner passes you a note that says, "Doesn't this class suck?" Suddenly, Carl Jung's phone rings. A still, small voice on the other line says, "Pump the brakes, pump the brakes." Thanks.
Oh my goodness. And for those of you who didn't know that I'm a psychotherapist, and now you all do, I would love to see both that poem and Robbie, yours as well, because I have a special place for those poems. And not just in my heart.
The fireplace.
No. I have an altar for mental health poems. Not, but I have a file for them. I suppose it's a good time for a commercial. We have this tradition of at Traveling Molly's of liking to pay our poets, our features, and we kind of have this idea that even if it doesn't pay much more than a cup of coffee, there needs to be some recognition of the value and the worth of our efforts. And to that end, and Bill, if you don't mind dropping that donation link into the chat again so people can see it, and also for the people in YouTube land. You can make a donation via PayPal, and the link is on the After Hours site, which is Al's is his journal. And so it may look like the money's going to him, but it is not. It is going to us, and we will distribute it to Janice and Marianne. It's so much easier to get people to just drop a $5, which is what I hope you will, in a hat when it's passed. it's not quite so easy when you have to go on PayPal. So be generous. And yes, and I just want to tell you that our poets for next month, I'm excited about both of them. Patricia Spears Jones. This is going to be a bi-coastal reading from New York. And for all of the Guild Complex people who are here, Luis Rodriguez. Luis Rodriguez is going to be joining us as well. And if you've been following his Facebook posts, he's going to be running for governor of California. I don't think we've ever had a poet do that, but we have to clear the way for Amanda Gorman a few years hence. So let's see, we're going to bring up next. Let's see, Mary Holly. You ready to go?
Yes, I am. You can hear me? Good. All right. So I've been working with on a translation project with a visual artist and writer in Uruguay. He was a political prisoner from the time he was 20 years old till he was about 26 in the 1970s in Uruguay. He went into exile in Sweden, spent a couple decades there, had a family, and eventually came back to Uruguay, which is where he lives now. And he's publishing a book of his sketches, along with some of he's written like 3 novels and about 6 volumes of poetry. And so the sections of the book are illustrated, the sketches are set off with texts that kind of go along with the different sections of the book. So this is a poem of his that I've translated that appears in the book, which should be, the book's out in Spanish already, and the English version is going to be coming out in about another month or so. So this is called Watching My Fingernails Grow. There were my fingers, like autonomous creatures with their full set of nails, their decimal count. And there were my eyes looking at the fingers on the palette of rice husks. All of autumn fell upon me, the molasses of the sun in the window, the night's chill without a heavy poncho, tobacco for thinking of poems, and the sounds of iron doors, the gates of the world. From the window of his cell, the little Spaniard sang sentimental tangos for my sentimental heart. We became better friends on the day they took us both for interrogation, and our heads collided as we rolled on the floor. After that, every afternoon, he'd tell me his love story, and I'd listen as attentively as if I had no love story, except for the one about self-love. Nails kept on growing from my fingers over the months. My eyes watched them grow like 10 plants. There, we had no scissors, and pissing was a triumph because an official piece of shit had ordered the removal of our pee cans. Then, as now, there was also a future, but the road was so long. If you closed your eyes, you went forward toward liberated regions of thought, toward yourself or toward the time that had to come with the same certainty as the seasons, the natural processes that ripen fruit. Thanks.
Mary, are we going to hear one of yours?
Oh, no, I'll just do that one tonight. That was a little bit longer, so I'll just leave it at that.
I hope you'll be coming back soon. That was just amazing. You know, there have been a few themes tonight. It's kind of neat. I mean, the political themes and the Freud and Jung and body parts and medical stuff, but also some of the Spanish-speaking countries of the West. And given that Al is in Mexico right now, and I will be there in March, and Bill and I are trying to learn the language, it's nice to hear all of it. So how about next, Richard Nestor? Let's hear what you've got.
Okay, thank you. Glad to be here. No, this is all right. Well, I got it. A tactic of mine in my books is to take several poems and group them together under one title. And this is the last poem in a set called Body Politics. Where the part is used as a kind of conceit. It's called Corpus Callosum. We are divided even in ourselves. Who knows when that happened? Fracture enough to call for telegraph and passport. But what are borders without bartering, or sanguine crossing in search of jobs? Travel broadens, and this must be why. Peace brought at last by small diplomacies, light brought to light by anxious go-between. Poem that might have been about a political subject. Just now, a brown-haired girl on the corner, arms folded, waiting for a bus. In another light, she might be beautiful. Her mouth made in the hurry of morning would be her mouth again, and not the world's. Her eyes are big with night and rain. Of such weariness are the mountains moving with sunlight made, and sorrow or its remnant, the snow line of 100 deliberate acts. Who can say where anything begins? Because a forest is weeping, a bus is late. The stock exchange staggers. A caramel in the girl's purse melts onto an orange-flavored lipstick, and she starts to cry. A door that will not close has opened into her bruises. In another light, they might be beautiful. They might begin to sing in another light. Lord, how can we talk of heaven when we have not seen the earth, ever in the way of stars, nor angels worth a tear's weight? Thank you.
Lovely. And body politic, what a way to put it together. So let's see, next, from the other coast, Sarah Sarai. And before she starts to read, I want to tell you, I would never have heard of her had not I been asked from the publisher of Blaze Vox to write a blurb for her book that was probably at least 10 years ago, right? Approximately. And her books have nice titles like Racy and stuff. So, Sarah, glad you came.
Oh, it's so nice seeing you, Nina. Actually, you had already chosen a poem of mine for third Wednesday. So anyway, that one was
fifth. That was fifth Wednesday.
The Future is Happy. And then there was Geographies of Soul and Taffeta. And my most recent book is That Strapless Bra in Heaven. So I don't know if that's racy or not, but it's aspirational. Okay, I'm going to read two poems. Hummingbird Feeder. What is the value of having a soul that, however defined sensory intelligence, prompting us to become a flank of stars or huddle of trees? For one, the soul is not a people. For one, the soul does not do terrible things. The self, destroy it. Step outside, top off the hummingbird feeder. Less time to be terrible, less time to judge. Them, us, yourself. For one, for honor, for a lark. I'm scrolling. Okay. Then no one's in high school these days. Of course, we're all always in high school every day, but such are the, I don't know, memories. No one's in high school these days. We graduate with contrastive badges, weirdo girl, prom girl, high IQ girl, neutral girl in the bleachers, one row behind puffy coat wearing skinny page girl, next to goofy boy, jabbing her car coat's loft, pow, pow, right finger, pow, pow, left index finger, blipping, you look fat in this coat, pow, and neutral girl thinking, shut up, and skinny page girl thinking, she'll skip the coat next week. Nerdy girl, abused girl, abused girl, abused girl, pot dealing girl, acid dropping girl, girl who in 70 years will not be so bitter girl, immovable past girl, future girl. I'm going to read, I don't know what I'm just so short. Pigeons are having unprotected sex on top of my air conditioner, upsetting most of my flock who know I run a moral air conditioner at top speed. There's no talking to a pigeon, only arm flappage in a stiff wind. I live by example which I set, not in concrete with the palm I set, nor in jello, though I swoon at shimmerings, vulnerability of women. I ask pigeons protect themselves from the consequential and the inconsequential. I ask women.
Well, thank goodness I don't feel like I'm still in high school, thank goodness. But
You're the only one, Nina.
If anybody wants to revisit, I was just told by one of my clients about a series called Sex Education, which is brilliant and racy and heartwarming at the same time. And I think it's on, I don't know whether it's on Netflix or Amazon, but it's worth a look. It will remind us if we've forgotten any parts of high school at all.
It's on Netflix.
Oh, good, yeah. So, Bob Chico, you want to bring us home?
That I can do with the usual frivolous brevities. Fiction. Each night you fall asleep while reading, so that when solitary's out walking past your house and mark the lamplight in your window, they slow their pace to wonder how hard a life you must have lived, what troubles run through your mind that keep you up so late. The Martians listened to us talking just to imagine where our thoughts would be floating if we weren't talking. Maybe we'd be thinking about Martians in that cute or minatory way we picture them, which they so love. The opening bars of Winter from Vivaldi's Four Seasons sound so much like Bernard Herrmann's music for the movie Psycho. When we step into the shower and move the head setting from spray to jet to snow, the flakes soak up all my screams of terror, all your squeals of delight. Wrecking Ball. Observing from the security fence as they raised the office building where long ago we made love, in the conference room and the utility closet, atop the Xerox copier, we spot another couple on the opposite side, younger, waiting for the demolition to be complete so they can go have sex amid the rubble. A candle flame trembles in your room across the way. And now a second candle. Your house is the old North Church, and I am the redcoats, ignorant of signals. Coming by sea. The Martians, who are thrilled by our spring, hover their saucers over the groundhog, so on this bright day it will not see its shadow. Best Western. During the drought, the soil crumblier than our old flesh, we go on a pilgrimage to visit all the wet spots we once left in motels across Auburn Gresham. When the neighbors fire their guns into the air at midnight, my roaming tomcat, who thinks the street belongs to him and every night is a new year, cries at the side door to be let in, realizing he has brought only a knife to this fight. At night as you slept, you kept one pinky between the pages of the book where you had left off, though late for you, early for me, I caught your finger wiggling to alter the direction of the plot. Yellow snow with no prints of foot or paw or hoof anywhere around. When those Martians gotta go, they gotta go. Yellow back pages. You have a voice I could listen to just reading the telephone book, now that there are no more telephone books. We're not May and December, we're just different kinds of snow. I am plummet, you are float. You're good packing, I am powder. I don't need the candle for my birthday cake or the friendly bonfire of an autumn night. Just want to catch the lamplight in your window from afar, knowing I am here, knowing you are there. The white fence between my house and yours wants to go wherever the snow is going now. As it melts. I want to live another spring so that when the last of the snow melts, making its sound across the roofs and the gutters and the sewers and the widening creeks, I might have a few drops of myself left over to give you. And finally, the dog who was so kind and resourceful to devour my homework long ago will not eat my poems now that I am old and need him once more. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chico. And I don't know, we're going to have to drag your poems out and do something with them, because really, and you know, you could have a book of like 100 pages just with, you know, each bit of brilliance on it. But you know, I suppose this is the end of the open mic, and I suppose that there are open mics that equal ours, but I don't think there are any that are as great as ours. And tonight is a perfect example of it. So we are going to move on to our features. And Marianne, I don't know if you saw that I sent you a note asking if you have strong feelings one way or another of being first or second. Janice is fine either way, though I think it might be a good thing for you to go first. Does that work for you? Or okay, so you're going to want to unmic you and unmic yourself. And for all of you, I just want to let you know that after the two features, we're going to have a Q&A, and I generally lead that. But if you have any really important questions you want me to ask, drop a line into the chat. And for those of you who are in the YouTube audience, also, you might want to drop a hello just so we know that you're there. And yeah, so there we go. Oh, one other thing. Hit that donation button, and Bill, if you want to drop it in again in the chat and also on YouTube, be great to give some money to Janice and Marianne. So let me start with Marianne, whose poetry I have known of since we were working on a Chicago anthology that never came to fruition at the beginning of Obama's presidency. And then we kind of crossed paths a number of times, and here you are. I'm so glad to hear you tonight. Marianne has 10 books of poetry, and she has some really great titles. The most recent book is Bestiary Dark. That's on Copper Canyon. She was triggered by her Fulbright in Australia, observing its astonishing wildlife. Her prose 4 essay collections recently, here's one of those good titles, The Little Death of Self, and what was that other one I liked? Anyway, The Glimpse Traveler, and so many more. She's gotten all kinds of honors, Guggenheim, NEA. I won't bother to catalog more of them. After 33 years teaching at Purdue, she went rogue, and I really want to know what that means, and emeritus in 2018. She does continue on the faculty at Warren Wilson College. So we have a few Warren Wilson grads, if you want to wave your hands, not me.
Oh,
but
right, yeah.
yeah. So let's hear what you got. Marianne, thank you for being here finally.
Okay. Oh, what happened here? Okay, I have to get rid of something. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Okay. All right. Okay.
Yes.
Well, thanks for the invitation to read tonight, and especially it's a pleasure to read with Janice, whose work I admire and who I've already met once at the infamous AWP, the conference we love to hate. Anyway, maybe I'm the only one that feels that way. Anyway, so I'm going to read mostly from this new book, Bestiary Dark, and but I want to read one poem from the previous book. The previous book called The Anti-Grief, which came out 2 years ago. Just one piece here. I saw a house, a field. Most of the rooms muted by cold, and the furniture there with its human chill under vast drapes of plastic for the season. Because eventually we are in austerity, walking room to room, enamored and saddened, all the crazy variations of bed and table, clocks, books on a shelf, foreign harbors etched some yesterday, framed for a wall, and the effrontery of windows assuming how lovely out, the certainty of lawn and woods, distance on a road, voices that in summer drift up and move away. Desire, that continues, and continuing is the part loved, just as there is emptiness with an occasion in it, clothes to remove before you ease into a bath. Branches and branches scraping is winter. And after midnight near morning, when I stepped out, the moon by half, was it deer I saw? A little one, and maybe its mother. Or they were smaller than deer, or larger. Oh, but they were strange, stopped across the snow like that. Okay. So I'm going to read you these poems that are really strange, and they freaked me out to write them, which is a good sign, I think. I don't know of what really, but so as Nina said, I had this Fulbright, and it wasn't a teaching Fulbright. It was so-called research, and I was there just to observe the wildlife, so I could write poems about it. And as you probably know, the wildlife in Australia is very, very odd, and there's nothing like it in the rest of the world, really. And I'm here to tell you it's all true. So I'm just going to read these. They don't have titles. So I'll just go from one to the other of a few, and I'll just pause between them, okay? That's where we are. The quiet, the way a kangaroo stops, stared at me, its little T-Rex arms frozen for how many minutes? What I mean is, I don't know what I mean. In an elevator, the body aches for gravity as that smallest room of the house rises like some weird high-handed heliums in charge of armies and ships, childhood, history, future is next day to next, major exports and imports of whatever time, place, race, gender we get, jolts to a stop. Look down while you're up there. Alley and meadow, the town dump crazy winged with gulls, minor royalty in the kingdom of old mattresses, busted toys, and shopping carts, no matter how inland. But everywhere is inland when you know how far the sea drops dark at the edge of things. Sea as idea, as original vague rumor of blue some stranger had of water in the year of great fires. Which year and whose year and how many years? He walked away into a little dot and spoke like a prophet. I saw mobs of those dots on the horizon most mornings. Kangaroos, joeys, more kangaroos. I lifted my binoculars. I see them too, big shot, an archangel said in passing. Fact is, dreams come if you're tired enough to say yes. I believed as a child, meaning I feared or I loved, or stood in the sun braced for those stupid photos. Easter, Christmas, 4th of July. Redact, redact, erase, cross out, tear it up, let the wind take it. And wind showers down embers. That's sleep, isn't it? So many with arms crossing chest in perfect rehearsal for the hit movie that might trade this world for another. It's that quiet. You think things. My laptop screen has a tiny magnifying glass leaning in the corner as if universe only gets larger. Next to it, tell me what you want to do. Tell who, I thought, before falling. she of the rescue center answered first thing, someone is poisoning magpies. Keep the bodies out of the freezer. We'll study their livers. People suck, she said, hanging up. But the indigenous elder could have told me that. On the wall, a poster, begone moths roosting in vacant caves, loving the cool air. Migrations go haywire in drought. Another call. Someone's hit a roo. The joey's sweet, but going crazy on the sun porch. This afternoon, okay, we'll come by. She still could be shaking her head. Bloody drivers. It's the glare, she thinks out loud. They could not see to see. Dickinson wrote nearly exactly that to nail down the last moment just after her, and then the windows failed. I can't tell cause from effect, one overlay from another. As for the magpies, their livers surely tried to clear to strain the poison. Fear or slow, the birds, I bet, how many flew just fine for a while in screechy loops, then to fall, to try up again and falling. Shiny black-white feathers run aground near the roses. Most raucous caroling in the garden. Silence for once. Is that what alerted the caller behind the house? A sudden, it was vast. So we get there just as some asshole, forgive me, on a joyride in the outback runs her down, the emu. And he keeps going. After all, he's got a planet to desecrate. A very long line of bloodied, feathered something she's lifting now and falling back to the road. Not exactly an ostrich, but it's lordly and slower each time. Don't fool yourself. It wasn't wind, not a broken hinge crying out to open a door. Our worthless offerings. Oh, emu, here's our numb speechlessness. But there are those who drive to, who cares if I kill, and never regret. We willed that news to her, medieval as prayer, all abruptly stricken in the flinders. The hand-wringing two of us, as another acolyte stepped from his truck with a huge plumber's wrench to bash her kindly a good 1, 2, 3. Her oh, each time fainter. Oh, on a loop. Reader, you who think poems should never story too much or render news of the day, I need to get this right. Grief is human speak for emu. Night's quiet since then. A tiny pre-kangaroo steps out of its mother's low, sweet spot, blind as certain insects, to follow the spit road. She tongued down her belly for this bit of pre-stars and vapor, pre-meteor whatnot, inchworming up that line of seasick wet, pioneering what's possible toward the pouch, to be a pinky, then months to fur out there past flood and drought and fire, into big or really big, a gray or a red, matter of fact leaping marvel of the bush. Over coffee on a clear, cold afternoon, the scientist 30 years astonished at this route that would never make it fully fleshed to MapQuest. The great salt road, the great silk road, nameless multiple alpha omega great roads of blood and pillage and threat and greed. The human movie glitters, its awful special effects. what to make of this world's greatest, the great spit road, warm wool bent back, narrow, shiny, and soak. Some new Pliny the Elder, bent over a map, reconvenes human knowledge with a gavel, remeasures the shrinking bestiary, birds, this percent gone, mammals, that percent still subtracting, flames or no flames. Books rot in the stacks. Who listens to the dead? Just wind and dust and lost creatures now, the Tasmanian tiger and dusky flying fox, the Rufus bristlebird, Gould's mouse, so on and more. The world's sleep, dark dreams, smoke, 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 fire, 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 water, water, no water. Add the threatened, add the no longer rivers, add it's blood all over the earth out there, and add music, whose main bony structures are pause and repeat. Like Chaplin in the old movie, orders one bean for cheap, napkin at his throat, cutting in half, in fourths, in eighths, the one bean given, eternal graying afternoon through the cafe window. Add, and yet, saddest phrase in English, it's been told and retold, and I've said on a repeat, as if language begins in regret, and a warning, last thing in the world, simple bean on a plate. What a good trick, present and past and future, ghost tripling in the moment. Those kangaroos, full-faced or profiled, once a 10-minute walk from our door in Canberra, on the verge of stare back, on the cusp of their no fear at all, their so? How many lifetimes? Emu, you woke up. I did, or I do, or I am, or I almost. What about those two hand wringers who dragged you off the road? The Americans? I heard the numb knot in their heads trying to untie itself. Emu, what about that killer savior of the heaviest wrench, stopping his truck, smashing you to grit, godforsaken, once, twice, 3 times to his, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. That bastard of love, my inner eyelid, the second one that opens sideways. I lay there and saw what I saw. And the murderous driver, all exhaust and cutthroat fumes be his. Where are you now, Emu? Exactly where you are, in the italics. No word of the fires. I began the day as a chat again, white-fronted, orange, crisp, crimson, with a brush-tipped tongue, like the honey eater with fruit, with nectar. How birds of prey, owl, nightjar, have camouflage coats, the army within narrowed to an old rage in me. The emu got it right, the Dreamtime stories, and the Australian coat of arms, and the stamps, the body politic, the original social media. Plus they kept drinking, the emus, from broken water pipes, bowing in thirst, if not homage. No word of the fires. I saw you, you birds I loved in glass cases, about to fake fly or land on artist-eat trees out of epoxy clay, wings tucked in at the nest or the bower, beaks open to complain or attack, tail up or down, white-throated, blue-faced, red-eyed, head cocked or looking down, side view, front view, a wagtail or a babbler, a large dove in my spare time, one solitary female brooding. I became a lorikeet, a whistler, one claw forward, one back, doubled at the nest, and morphed into two birds. So many ways to be a next thing. I wondered where and why not. The brush bronze wing, my head cocked or looking up, long-legged, in a hurry, taken aback, curious, bored, stuffed with arsenic and cotton, to be fully forever a bird in that moment. No word of the fires, even here and after the fact, a world away, I swore it got darker. As for Pliny and his bestiary, he wandered around Rome, his toga stuffed with birds, still alive, though maybe I dreamt that, sleeping as Vesuvius slept for so long. I was as every bird, as a whistling kite can be, posed over my shredded rabbit. I went goshawk, wings spread as Nixon's were, his hands on the globe, pre-election, Norman Rockwell snapping photos in a ruse for the silly portrait the man really wanted. No word from friends near the fires. So my favorite of birds, I still tell myself, is the osprey. I should have been, while the fish I stood on leaked blood like the real thing. You can't just pass the time in these times doing nothing. No lack of drama in that dusty museum as the rare white-eyed duck looked on. With another skin on the wound, so much can be grafted, though mostly my own hip or back will do. If it's really the body and not metaphor, some expert in cellular smarts could link up those capillaries, like the guy on a chair at the basement power box knows which wires, how and why the fridge will work again, or the stove, and the lights when windows darken. The windows did go dark. And I took my friend's graft as gift, pictures of the fire from her deck in Australia, sheet after sheet of solid flaming red and black, sky never like this to the south, her sickened pause for photos to archive, to document, as people say, rounding up the sum total, distance it from the some point called future. For some point called future, this nightmare really happened. To frame and capture means the bloody bit might heal in 6 weeks, a few years, a decade. A patient opens her eyes post-surgery. Didn't she just lie down minutes ago after chatting with the doctor, his last vacation to some island she never heard of? She feigned interest. Now she's here in this cold room with parts of her missing. I still imagine my friend sleeping, trying to sleep. Fire is a monster. No plot or plan. It never intends. So many creatures in the bush or the city are shy and have no idea. I don't want to say which ones. Even now, I want to hide them. But it's those who rarely make a sound that kept screaming. Spirits released by fire and fear, freed of their bodies to rise from ash and soot where they dropped or were caught by the burning groves, koalas and kangaroos, ancient orders of wallabies, skinks and lizards, the hidden wealth of nowhere else, cherished mammals and reptiles, the perennial question mark of platypus, so weirdly bits of both, plus bird. As for the solitary wallaroos, they too, out of their flesh and blood in some kind of between world, not like a dream or a bardo, not like anything I could humanly tell you. But their shapes must be gauzy and strange, a thought, really a second thought, circling the charred, toothy sticks that used to be trees, circling slow the way medieval artisans took their time to cut into wood and ink up for their bestiaries, liking to monster them a little, add an extra leg or head to those creatures. Yet another scare to the other grim wonders of their time and time again. The hand goes looser and rogue, drawing things never seen, though the claims were real enough, gone whimsical, cartoonish to us, who demand exactitude, and always how many left on the planet, and why? Oh, why is that? Our why falls from the sky in embers to spot fire any grassy place close, is lightning that strikes from smoke disguised as clouds over the no-rain bush, or the city making its own weather, is eucalyptus oils in the leaves, sparking the next tree to tree. Or it's secret and lethal as air equals gas, our carbon, our fault toward the long gone. A poet in Canberra emails, the poets indeed should be dark. So many animals, at least 3 billion into ash and charred bone, or who am I and where, numbed hectare on hectare of blackened gum tree leaves, ruined waterways. I despair. The last sentence as she slipped off screen. Then to find from the old French, despere, adding the DE, an emphasis reversal of spere to hope. Despair, the world has a history, and I'm wrong. No afterlife in it. And the last poem I want to read is, I want to read particularly because Janice is here. And this is an elegy really from my friend Bridget Kelly. Was a colleague and friend of Janice. And Bridget was a longtime friend of mine, and you guys probably know her work. Anyway, we lost her a few years ago now. Cows, they have stupid eyes, friend so dear to me wrote. But I'd bring her back to see sheep in the paddock step out of their fleece, like the gleaming bodies she knew from the bath, washing child after child those years. She'd like that. Poet, painter, silenced by cells gone ruthless, not telling one of us. I can't hold that against her. Stricken body gets so familiar it turns to a rag. It must be hung on a line to dry. I tell her I know now what's solitary and what isn't. Sleep, their abrupt nakedness inside that fence wasn't a simple matter. Blade and blood, radiant fold on fold distant under one giant eucalyptus for shade. Bare bodies by way of the shearing, a shock. Nor the old masters, what they did, never easy either. To brush in a backdrop, burnt umber and bone, black, warming up each room in their paintings, laying down sorrow as context, as drapes that part only at the most beloved bit lit, whatever it is, what she left. Thank you.
That was so remarkable. And, this a thing for me about writing about the natural world. And so often people write about it as if observers only. And the reality is we are humans interacting with that world, whether it's running over an animal or, or killing it in our environmental impact, or, in Trump's huntings. And I love that you engage with them, actively, and bring the human that is so truly part of the natural world in one way or another.
Oh,
Thank you for that. Thank you. So I am now going to introduce Janice Harrington, and I haven't looked at this bio very closely, but actually it does not mention something that I will mention. I've met Janice at the memorial event for the publisher and founder of Fifth Wednesday Journal, which you were, a few of us people were in it. Just what a remarkable reader as well as poet. Her latest book of poetry is Primitive, The Art and Life of Horace H. Pippin. That's in Boa editions. She's also the author of 2 earlier books of poems. This is quite a title. I love this title too. Even the hollow my body made is gone, and the hands of strangers, and as well as the author of, yes, you did mention it, award-winning children's books. I do know other poets who have written children's books. I don't know how that straddling works, but maybe we'll hear about that. Harrington curates a space for image, a blog about poets' imagery, and she teaches creative writing at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Janice, thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to hearing you again.
All right. No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to Nina, to Al, to the Traveling Molly series, all of you. And it's a pleasure to hear Marianne. You have been sitting out there in TV land for a while, and I'm worried about all of you. Just real quick, could you stand up so I can see if you actually have, like, knees, backs, that sort of thing? Just stand up. I kind of want to see how tall you are. I don't like reading poems to short people. So if you could stand up and, stretch a little bit. Come on, the poet's trying to help you out here. Let's take advantage.
I'm short, sitting and standing.
Okay, good. We've all got a good stretch out. I'm going to start my timer here for a minute. So just a second. Great, we're on time. I want to start not with my own poem, but with a poem by a poet that I admire very much, Derek Austin. And this is from his new book, Tenderness. And can everybody hear me? We good? All right. It's called Sadness Isn't the Only Muse. I can't imagine myself reading bedtime stories to a toddler. And I'm older than my father was when he read those brightly colored books to me. His voice is deeper than mine will ever be, but just as sweet. I always picked Freight Train. I loved the black caboose. A train runs across the track through tunnels and cities, darkness and light forever. I still love books where nothing happens, good or bad. The page is one landscape I move through. I thought that poem was one that poets could connect to. That last line, the page is one landscape I move through. Right? I live in Illinois, and the landscapes around me are massive cornfields, soybean fields, and of course, reconstructed prairies. So let's start in a prairie. This is called Wind Shear. And I also decided I depend on literary journals and small magazines to publish my work. And I thought I'd pick everything that was published in a journal to share with you this time. And so I'm not going to be reading from my books. I can hear my publisher screaming in the background, but we're gonna do literary journals. This is Wind Shear. Okay. Under the magnolia, a winter-starved hare stills and pretends it is not there. And wanting less of fearfulness, I pretend I do not see my camouflage, the wild promises in my gaze, and step carefully by. Morning, bitter morning, lack and awful patience wait at every compass point. Morning, mournful, the prairie seals wind-scored stems with snow. Here, inside a stalk of goldenrod, a gall wasp will ride hard winter out. Here, between my ribs, wasp of lonely, wasp of not yet, wait and ride hard winter out. Such a slow season, laggard and mean. I can't explain the cardinals I've seen of late, but the crow's black fist, the way they bully eve and air, stab the morning with the sharpest ah. I understand it now. Ah, I see the reason and agree. In Southern Review, I had, yay, Southern Review. I had several poems published. It's one of my favorite journals. Nocturne. Once the child held his hand and they walked down the path into the night to the outhouse. His t-shirt shone moon bright. The child beside him, little satellite, little meteor. And in the dark, I listen. If it rains, I'll shut the window. If your breath comes like rising steam, I'll know that you are writing a nightmare. I'll push my heel against you or worry my hand against your back, some motion to say, it's not real. Come back. You're safe. You're safe. The stars listen, gathering, making from our discords their deep silence. If the gods listen, they hear only the ping and ping of brief lives. They veer away, or perhaps hungry. Draw close. Draw close. Beside the Bulwar Trail, a woman watches bats' wings and flit their precisions, diving to snatch iridescent bodies, a lent of meats. Bats are not blind. Some see quite well. Some see only ultraviolet. Some use no echolocation. Vision has its continuum. Blindness invented, assigned by those seeing what they choose to see. They choose to see. She was once a happy child and unafraid. Her father's skin was a part of the night, a stratosphere that starry remnants struck or keeled against, that flared into light or heat or shimmers of dust. Love does the same, though she didn't know it then. The child followed, holding tight. He had returned home, their equinox, their solstice. She followed, shining, holding his fingers like kite strings. Little comet, little meteor. My father died in the mid-90s. I hadn't seen him for decades, since childhood. And when I learned of his death, the strangest thing that happened was that I remembered a picture that I'd seen him draw. And I hadn't even thought about that picture. It was buried so back, It wasn't even a memory. But on hearing about his death, suddenly that picture came into my mind. This is called layered pigments. White pines, deer, 3 crows in flight, and in a craze of pastel strokes, a waterfall. Holding his canvas, I listened to the water slip, the beat of hooves against matted duff, the cawing crows. I see his labor and the flames that burned it all, the drawing that hung once on our basement wall, a phantom image in my mind, inside a frame he built himself. Sadness. Why do you mutter? Why are you here? A Black man drew and sorted light. He made waterfall with deer. He left me his imagining, proof that I too might imagine, see beyond or despite, or take for mine this chaotic light and open black wings in flight. Yet how poorly he layered and blended the colors, plied in quick, shallow strokes, hardly an artist. But have I misjudged or judged too quickly? The boy who sold tickets to the peanut gallery, to the colored seats, who would never let his children wear red or colors too loud. Surely he knew the shadows, the lines, the things erased, the contours given to all things black. Ghost, you brought me waterfall with deer, or in my father's eye, or what the fire took to hang by whatever name between my ribs. It hangs there still. In the night, I hear the scrape of a colored pencil, quick strokes, someone imagining, choosing. When I read through my books, I am surprised to find that I have a lot of poems that deal with falling or balance. I could do a whole program on falling poems. And to prove that to you, I found this poem, which is in copper nickel, and it's called Breaking His Fall. And what you want to know about this poem is the way that it works. The word fall, F-A-L-L, has an amazing number of meanings, and the poem responds to those meanings. Okay. Breaking his fall. With colored pencils, I sketch a prairie iris, leaf blades, blossom, lower petals, the falls with their slight beards and delicate ruffle. And against her nape, that flow of hair that shifts with a sway of hip, a fall of locks, allure, and also alluring. The sweep of a meteor's arrival, a fall, astronomers say, a fall, the fiery ember and the long unending orbit, like memory, like the point of pain that comes and passes in a night where there is no sleep to fall into, no stay from worry. We fall like wrestlers into stories, into lives, wrapping arms and thighs to grope, grab, grapple over a plot of ground, a fall, a marker for loss and loss of grace. A tumble, a topple, a spill, then basophobia. His skin abraded, abused, each fall worse than the fall before. Nothing we can stop or ward against. He falls and scars and bruises. He falls all Humpty Dumpty, and so we burst apart. We wait for his next fall. For the falls inside every breath or shift of light. And wait too for that darker fall that leaves nothing afterwards. Be careful, we say. Be careful, though meaning falls short. Be careful. And finally, it's interesting, this poem sort of connects to the poem that Cameron read. It's called Confession, and it appeared in Pleiades. Confession. And my husband hates prose poems, so I decided I would write one. The married life. Confession. I will admit this to you. I'm a thief. I've always been a thief. Even as a child, I stole rosaries from the lost and found at Sacred Heart. I stole cookies and slices of cake. I stole my mother's necklaces and gave them away at the church raffles. You did not know this about me. Not for certain, but now I confess it. My mother learned of my crime long ago. She saw that her daughter was a thief and knew that something had to be done. She removed my left hand and my right. She hid them where I could not find them and returned them on Sundays and on school days and on Sundays for church. After service, she took them back. What does a child do without hands? I didn't know until I remembered something my mother often said. So on Sunday, and the devil will make you pick out the stitches with your eyeball. In hell, the people are not permitted to use their hands. Their hands, which did not pray, which gave nothing, which held on for so long to such small and worthless things, and which they use for bad purposes, are gone. They do not tell you this in the Bible, but it follows logically. I learned to use my eyes, my left eye and my right. I wanted my eyes to be ambidextrous as my hands were. It was hard at first. It was hard to hold on to things with your eyes. I always looked as if I were weeping. I suffered eye strain and needed glasses, but finally my eyes were as good as my hands. Soon, what my hands could do, my eyes could do better. Once, I stole the Big Dipper with my eyes alone. I stole Orion's belt and the collar from his dog. But I knew what my mother would say. Bad girl, thief, I taught you better. So I put them back. All of this I did with my eyes. That is why my eyes are red. That is why I look so tired. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, that took me a while to actually do, to come out of mute. Mute is not a state that I'm comfortable in, as some of you know. That was just amazing. That was just, what a juxtaposition too. What a juxtaposition. So yes, I am blown away. And I don't know if this leaves you with questions. It leaves me with questions, but I want to make an observation because I am trying mightily to learn Spanish. I was thinking about the word hope that you used, Marianne, and the French is espérer, and the Spanish esperar is, although somewhere down the list it talks about hope, but it means waiting. And I'm just totally jazzed about how hope and waiting interact with each other. So I think maybe a poem, and that I don't know. Someone should write it. But this is the part
You should write it. You should write it.
I've been so dry lately, but I sometimes, I think, okay, this is the evening that the poems that have filled my ears is going to send me back to writing, maybe after the 2022 election. So there's a lot of work we got to do before then. So, okay, this is where the Q&A begins. I have one question, and then I'm going to ask you guys to ask each other a question. So you may want to play with that in your heads. Neither of you are emerging poets, though you might want to say something about that. I'd like to know if you have something in your mind that you want to accomplish, or a project that you have before you that you want to take on.
Well, is this the Janice and me, or everybody?
Just for you and Janice.
Well, I'm going to say something that I firmly believe, and that is, I don't think intention is worth a damn. I think, you can start, I put out my begging bowl and something drops in. I can feel a stirring about it, an image, rarely an idea, not an abstraction, but I'm really an imagist, so I need something might drop in, and then I'm just curious about it, and I go blank, and then I just go from there. So intention always never works, I don't think, because it's all about a discovery of something, and you don't know what it will be, and so there's that. However, I mean, you mentioned that I'm going to be writing residence at Colby College in Waterville, Maine, and what I'm going to do there, and this is my own, I feel like, it was Abbott and Costello, this was your big idea, kind of thing that I already am worried about. But I'm going to take this book of poems, Bestiary Dark, and work with students to basically use this as seed to do some kind of piece together that we will sort of make up. They will add and subtract from these poems, I hope, and dream off from these poems, and we'll make a kind of black box theater production, and we'll put that on. So we're going to do that. I have zero experience in this sort of thing. Although I've done my book Cadaver Speak, where I was in the cadaver lab at Purdue for a semester and took life drawing, and then I wrote this book of poems. And the title poem, Cadaver Speak, I've done many times, here in America and also abroad. I've done this with medical students and student poets as a kind of reader's theater, where we read through the whole thing. And so I've done that kind of so-called staging, but that's pretty straightforward. What I'm talking about here is something where we break down the poems and they virtually disappear, and something else hopefully comes up that is sort of influenced by them, but I don't know what. So that's very scary. So I don't know, I guess that counts as intention, but it's still a big mystery to me. And I have no idea, it might be a total failure, although I'm not sure what failure would look like in this situation. So, maybe it doesn't matter. I mean, it's all about this group process that we'll be doing. And I'm a person who's never liked to work with groups. That's why I'm a writer. I like to sit in my little cave and write my stuff and be by myself. So this is quite a thing for me to take on. But I guess I'm going to do it. I mean, it looks like I'm going to do it. So
Yeah, good for you.
anyway, how would you answer that, Janice?
Well, it was interesting that Nina started out saying that we weren't emerging poets. And I disagree with that.
Yeah, I thought that too. I
I
thought,
think
what do you mean?
we're never not emerging poets. We always are.
Yeah.
And
We're always reinventing the wheel. Always.
right.
Janice, I don't know why I knew you were going to say that, but
Yeah. I think it's important to say, because I think we live in a culture that looks at older poets and first of all doesn't see them, or it's always about the next flavor of the month. And I think if you're an older poet, it's important to say we're still vibrant, we're still excited about poetry. I'm preparing for my classes, and I love poems. I love reading them, and the things that poets, I'm still excited by that. And yeah, so what I'm doing is I was very fortunate to have gotten a Guggenheim, and I'm using that to travel around the Midwest and interview African Americans, look at African American communities and historical sites, and talk to artists. And COVID has not helped. Has made it difficult. But that's what I'm doing.
That's great. You got a Guggenheim. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm pleased.
well, maybe instead of saying that you're not emerging, I should have just said accomplished and award-winning. And I totally appreciate, I mean, this is, if you take the average age of this, our readers,
Please
it's
don't.
not under 50, I don't think. Let's just say that. So you're not invisible here, but we all know to some degree about experiencing that. I don't know. I certainly know the more accomplished writers than the newer ones, and I'm sure that's a bad thing. But all right. So do you, Janice or Marianne, have a question you want to ask the other?
Oh, I loved hearing your elegy for Bridget.
Mm.
And it's so hard. It's so
Yeah.
hard because when someone has died and you're close to them, to get to those feelings. And so what was your process? How were you able to do it? I have a friend who died about a decade ago, and I so want to be able to write a poem for him and his life, but I haven't been able to do it. So what did you do? What made that possible?
Well, that particular poem, I mean, kind of just came upon me, I mean, when we got to Australia, it was the time of year, it was like really the end of summer for them because everything's reversed. So we got there in February, that's sort of the end of summer, still very warm. And they were shearing the sheep.
Mm.
So it was like sheep porno, you'd see these, sheared sheep, they're sort of, shiny, glowing bodies, out there. Was like, what? It's like that they had just, removed all their clothes and were dancing around. And of course they weren't dancing, and I know Merwin has this wonderful one-line poem, which is called Elegy, and it says, who would I show it to?
Mm.
And I think that always, I've always loved that notion. And I immediately thought Bridget would love this, would love to see this, just see these sheep out there in the paddock, in the distance, like, because we were in the car, of course, and we're driving. So we, and then that poem just sort of, kind of presented itself to me. So that was kind of easy in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Bridget was a painter too. I mean, she didn't talk about it much, but well, she was many things besides a poet.
Yeah.
But and very secretive, as we know. about most things. So, but quite talkative, contrary to popular opinion and knowledge. But I don't know. I mean, so that in a way that was a one-off for me, you know. Although grief is a huge subject in poetry and in everyone's poetry and in mine as well. But I don't know. How would you answer your own question? I mean, you haven't written about Bridget.
I haven't written about Bridget, no. But just even the poem that I read about my father, the layered pigment, that poem I revised. There's drafts going back. I found one, I think 2016. You know, I didn't finish it till it didn't get published till last year. So I've been revising it and pushing it through all these different permutations, trying to get the words right, and trying to shape it. It's been everything, every form you could imagine. It's been longer, it's been shorter, but that was the process. That writing the poem was almost an act of grief. That revision itself was the manifestation of the grief, because you just couldn't finish it.
So thinking about the painting, that must have been the thing that turned it to a positive poem instead of just a lament, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, when did you find that I mean, I love revision. I think that's where the real writing happens. And so, you know, where you find out what it is, what this creature is that you're working on. But when did that happen? When did that come into it? Was that from the start?
No.
Yeah, that's what I would guess, that it's not something that was slowly revealed to you.
Right. It took a while to figure out how to get out of the poem, or to figure out what the poem structure was. At one point I was focused on the crows that are in the picture. There's 3 of them, and there's my brother, my sister, myself. So there's 3 of us. And then I got rid of that. Then there was a version where it was more centered on him and his life and my feelings about him, and then that went aside. So it had more endings and beginnings and middles than I can recount.
Right.
You know,
You really stayed with it and kept listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, on the subject of revision and also on elegies, I remember years ago reading a Donald Hall poem in Best American Poetry, and you know how they have those descriptions in the back. He talked about the fact that this was for a friend of his who had died. And I don't know that I am going to quite capture this. I think he wrote it, he was writing it for over 20 years.
Oh my goodness.
I could be wrong, but I think it was, and I felt so much, I was so grateful to him because, you know, I have had this one series I've been working on since 2008, but also had a slow writer and an obsessional editor, of my work. And so, yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, I remember Ellen Voigt saying one time that we stop too soon, you know. The people say, okay, Don, next poem, you know, and we don't stay with stuff. And I think that's true. I mean, I think because we can write a poem, we can write something that looks like a poem, that seems like a poem, you know, barks like a dog, must be a dog. And then, but, you know, and so it's our own skill that does us in, because we, you know, kind of like, it feels like it's done. It feels like a poem, done, end of story. But yeah, that's a wonderful example of that, but the father poem. that you wrote, that it just keeps revealing more and more layers, right? So it feels like a real experience of thinking and feeling and being mystified by something. So, I mean, that's great. I mean, I think that's true. I do what I call my hospital rounds now with piles of poems that are in various states of undress, and I just kind of sit with them and go through them like I'm visiting them in the hospital. They're in a coma and they might like rise up and speak. I've spoken about this before, but it's a lot of patience. It's just kind of going over because you can't see everything at once. And, and suddenly some poem's been hanging around for a while and I read it through out loud always, because your ear is smarter than the rest of you. And then I see something like, oh God, and I like mess with it. But then the next day when I go through it, I'm just really curious, like what I will think of that. Because I might change it back, but I'm just generally curious, so that it's always in this kind of fluid state, even stuff that really seems set in stone. And I'm trying to hold back and see it as an equal in a way, as a separate creature.
We're almost time to wrap up, so I'm going to use this as an opportunity to say, donate some money and I can give some to these amazing poets. 2, next month we will have Patricia Spears Jones and Luis Rodriguez. And now, though you won't have much time, I just want to ask your thoughts about discovery. As you started to talk about, Marianne, just brief thought about discovering the poem as you're writing it.
I think it's important to always listen to your poems. Sometimes they'll talk back to you. Sometimes they'll tell you what direction to go in and what path. So sometimes we're so busy writing them that we forget to listen.
Yeah, and don't force your will upon them. I think don't have an agenda for them. I mean, that's what I meant with my little snarky comment about intention. I mean, that really go in, with your begging bowl, and try to be as empty as possible. And in a way as sort of stupid as possible. Just allow it to sort of teach you. So, I mean, that's all I can say. I mean, I think that real pleasure is that. I mean, it becomes a total spiritual discipline, without any kind of religious connection, but just this act of being, I guess. And, and for me, things fall away, like the historical moment, even though we're writing about these things and we're using things like gender, our personal history, class, race, all these things, but that really becomes, in some ways, for me, irrelevant. Like, what matters is this kind of depth of attention to whatever it is we're working on. So it's kind of a selfless act. The self disappears,
Well, isn't that a perfect way to wrap up the evening? Thank you both so much. Give them a hand. And if you're not ready to go home well, you're already home, actually. Write some poetry.
Thanks to the virus.
Yes. Thank you both so much. What an evening. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It's fun to be here, wherever we are.
Yes.